You paid $500,000 for drywall in a 2-car garage. Congratulations, you signed a 30-year mortgage for what is essentially a participation trophy in prepackaged mediocrity. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, granite countertops, a kitchen island you never use. And when the world collapses, when society finally admits it was held together with credit scores and good vibes, your precious investment becomes a glass-walled coffin with a welcome mat. Today, we're calculating the definitive Z-score for the standard American suburban home using our 4-point tactical matrix: defensibility, sustainability, mobility, psychological impact. By the end of this evaluation, you'll understand exactly why your realtor should be tried for crimes against survival strategy. Let's begin. The marketing pitch was beautiful, wasn't it? Open floor plan, natural light flooding through oversized windows, curb appeal that screams success to your neighbors, the HOA-approved fence that keeps your property values high and your illusions intact. This is the dream, the combination of financial responsibility and adulthood. You made it. Except, you didn't make it. You made yourself a target. You built a monument to accessibility and called it security. Every design choice in modern suburban construction prioritizes aesthetics over function, comfort over survivability, and resale value over actual structural integrity. Your home was designed by people who never considered that one day you might need to defend it from anything more threatening than an aggressive door-to-door salesman. Let's see how this investment performs when the variables change.
Defensibility, the illusion of walls. Let's start with the most obvious failure, your walls. Modern suburban homes are built with wood framing and half-inch drywall. That's it. That's what stands between you and the outside world. A motivated 10-year-old with a hammer could breach your perimeter in under 3 minutes. An adult human in crisis mode, 90 seconds. Your exterior walls provide zero ballistic protection, none. A standard 9mm round will pass through both sides of your wall and still have enough velocity to ruin your day on the other side. Forget about rifle rounds. Your living room might as well be made of acoustic foam. Those beautiful windows you paid extra for, the ones that let in all that natural light, those are pre-installed entry points. Ground floor windows are standard smash and grab access. Any window larger than a human torso is a door that hasn't been used yet. You probably have, 10, 15 windows on the ground level alone? That's 15 separate breach points you'd need to monitor and reinforce simultaneously. You can't. You won't. And the glass itself is single pane tempered at best. 1 brick, 1 chair leg, 1 moment of pressure, and you've got a new door you didn't ask for. Your actual doors are even worse. That solid core front door you're so proud of? It's mounted to a frame with 3-inch screws into soft pine. The door itself might hold, but the frame will splinter under 1 solid kick. Hinges exposed on the outside because aesthetics matter more than physics. And your back door, the one leading to your precious patio, that's usually a sliding glass panel. Might as well hang a curtain. Lift and remove bypass takes 7 seconds if you know what you're doing. Your deadbolt is theater. Your Ring doorbell is a participation trophy. Interior defensibility is somehow worse. Open floor plans mean 0 choke points, no fallback positions, no narrow corridors where one defender could hold against multiple attackers, just wide open sightlines that work both ways. You wanted that visual flow between the kitchen and living room. Now you've got no way to section off your home during a breach. Every room connects to every other room through wide doorways with no actual doors. The master bedroom is usually ground floor and single-story built, or accessible via a wide staircase with no gate points in 2-story models. There's no safe room unless you built one yourself, and statistically you didn't. Your HOA wouldn't approve the permits anyway. The garage is a structural joke. That door? Aluminum panels on a track system. Ramming speed with any vehicle turns it into confetti. Once they're in your garage, they have access to your interior door, which is usually just a standard hollow core because it's technically interior. You've now been breached through the weakest point in your entire structure, and you probably didn't even reinforce it, because why would you? It's just the garage. Roofing provides 0 vertical defense. Composite shingles over plywood sheathing over roof trusses spaced 2 feet apart. Lightweight, cost-effective, completely indefensible. Anyone with ladder access can breach through your roof with a chainsaw in under 10 minutes. Your attic insulation won't stop them, your ceiling drywall won't slow them down, and you won't hear them until they're already inside because modern homes are built for energy efficiency, not acoustic monitoring of perimeter threats. Defensibility score? 2 out of 10. And I'm being generous. The only reason it's not a 0 is because walls technically exist and locks technically function under perfect conditions with cooperative threats. Your home was designed to keep out weather and maintain temperature control. It was not designed to keep out humans who've decided walls are optional.
Sustainability, the resource desert. Let's talk about what happens after day 1. Assuming you survived initial contact, assuming you somehow held your indefensible position. Now what? You're sitting in a structure that depends entirely on external infrastructure you no longer have. Your home is not self-sufficient. It's barely sufficient when everything works. Water dependency is catastrophic. You're on municipal supply, city pressure systems, treatment facilities, pumping stations. The moment the grid fails, you have whatever's in your pipes and your 40-gallon water heater. For a family of 4, that's 3 days of drinking water if you're disciplined and don't flush. You probably don't have a well. You definitely don't have a rainwater collection that meets health standards. Your sprinkler system doesn't count. That decorative pond in your backyard is a bacteria festival. You'll be dehydrated and making terrible decisions by day 5. Food storage is a fantasy. Your refrigerator holds maybe a week of perishables that'll spoil within 72 hours of power loss. Your pantry contains what? Canned soup and pasta? Optimistically, you've got 2 weeks of food if you ration and nobody panics. Most households have 3 days. You don't have a root cellar, you don't have preserved goods, you have a Costco membership and ambient anxiety. Your vegetable garden, if you even have one, produces decorative tomatoes 3 months a year. That's not sustainability. That's a hobby that makes you feel connected to the earth. Power generation is non-existent. You're on the grid. When that fails, you have nothing unless you installed solar panels and a battery system, which statistically you didn't because the ROI was 15 years and you plan to move in 7. You might have a portable generator in the garage. That's cute. You have enough fuel for what? 12 hours of runtime? 24 if you're conservative? Then you're burning furniture for heat and cooking over decorative candles you bought at HomeGoods. Your electrical system is designed for consistent external supply at specific voltages. It's not modular, it's not adaptable, it's not designed for anything except the world working exactly as promised. Climate control becomes your enemy. Modern homes are insulated but not thermally independent. You need active heating in winter and active cooling in summer to maintain livable temperatures. Your HVAC system is electric. When that fails, you're experiencing the actual ambient temperature of your region with no mitigation. Suburban homes overheat in summer because of poor natural ventilation and oversized windows creating greenhouse effects. They lose heat rapidly in winter because they're built to minimum insulation code requirements. You'll be hypothermic or heat-stroked depending on the season. Your fireplace, if you have one, is decorative gas and doesn't function without ignition systems. The chimney is probably blocked because you never used it. Medical supplies are a joke. You have a first aid kit under the sink with Band-Aids and expired aspirin. Maybe you've got prescription medications for chronic conditions. Those run out. You have no surgical supplies, no antibiotics, no trauma response capability. The nearest hospital is 8 miles away and no longer operating. Your bathroom mirror and good intentions won't stop a sepsis infection. Waste management collapses immediately. Your toilets require water pressure. Your sewer system requires municipal processing. When that stops, you're producing biological waste with no disposal method. You'll be digging latrines in your backyard within a week, competing for space with your vegetable garden that isn't producing food. Disease vector risks skyrocket. You're living in your own contamination. Sustainability score, 3 out of 10. You get minimal points for having a roof and walls that temporarily maintain temperature. You get credit for having some initial supplies, but your home is a consumption-based asset built for a functioning supply chain. When that chain breaks, your shelter becomes a slowly depleting resource trap that penalizes you for staying.
Mobility, the strategic anchor. Here's the real horror. You can't leave. Well, you can, but you're abandoning everything. Your home is a fixed position. It doesn't move, it doesn't adapt, it exists at one specific set of coordinates and that's where it'll stay while threats move freely around it. You have exactly one viable exit strategy, walking out the front door, maybe the back door if that's closer. That's it. Ground level egress only. Second-story homes have stairs that terminate at predictable locations. You're funneled, you're channeled. Anyone watching your home knows exactly where you'll emerge because architecture is consistent. Your exit routes are obvious. Your timing is observable. You have no concealed egress, no tunnels, no secondary structures connected via covered walkways. You leave through doors that face the street or the backyard. That's the menu. Vehicle dependency is a critical failure point. Your transportation is in the garage or driveway. That means you have to go outside, expose yourself, access the vehicle, start it assuming it functions, and then navigate surface streets in a potentially compromised area. You can't drive through your house. You can't load supplies under cover. You're making multiple trips through open air carrying supplies while presenting yourself as a target. Your garage door takes 8 seconds to open fully. That's 8 seconds of noise and obvious activity, broadcasting your intentions to everyone within 200 meters. Your car itself is suburban transportation, a sedan or SUV designed for commuting and grocery runs. It's not a tactical vehicle. It's not reinforced. It has normal ground clearance and street tires. The moment roads are blocked by debris or abandoned vehicles, you're stuck. You can't go off-road. You can't push through obstacles. Your mobility asset becomes a stationary metal box you're trapped inside. And you probably have a quarter tank of fuel because you always meant to fill up tomorrow. Foot mobility is compromised by location. Suburban homes are built in developments. That means residential streets connecting to collector roads, connecting to arterial roads. You're miles from highways. You're miles from anything except other houses. To reach actual strategic locations, supply centers, rural areas, defensible terrain, you have to cross significant open suburban sprawl, sidewalks and cul-de-sacs, perfectly maintained infrastructure that offers zero concealment. Everyone can see you, you can see everyone. It's a panopticon of vulnerability. You have no fallback position. If your home is compromised, you're immediately homeless. There's no secondary structure, no bunker, no hidden cache point. You're carrying what you can grab in 60 seconds and hoping you planned well. You didn't. Nobody does. You'll realize you forgot medications or documents or critical supplies within the first 6 hours. And you can't go back, because going back is how you die. Strategic flexibility is zero. You can't relocate your home. You can't adjust your position based on threat assessment. You're pinned to a specific location by property ownership and mortgage debt that no longer matters. Everyone knows where you live. Your address is public record. Your routines were observable. Your presence is expected. You are where you've always been, and everyone who wants to find you knows exactly where to look. Mobility score? 2 out of 10. You have exits. They're just terrible exits that expose you completely. You have a vehicle. It's just a vehicle designed for a world that no longer exists. Your home is an anchor. It's weighing you down. And when you finally realize you need to leave, it'll be 12 hours too late.
Psychological impact, the sanity drain. Now let's discuss what this place does to your mind, because the physical failures are just foreplay. The real damage is psychological. Your home is a monument to normalcy bias. Every corner reminds you of the world that ended. Every family photo, every piece of furniture you financed, every paint color you debated for 3 weeks. This was your life, past tense, and you're sitting in its corpse pretending it still means something. The familiarity breeds complacency. You know these walls. You've lived here for years. Your brain wants to believe it's safe because it was safe. For so long, it was safe. You raised kids here. You had birthday parties and Thanksgiving dinners and normal human experiences. That emotional history overrides rational threat assessment. You'll stay too long. You'll defend the indefensible. You'll die protecting a building that has more sentimental value than tactical value. This is where people make fatal mistakes. They treat their home like it's special. It's not. It's drywall and debt. Isolation destroys group cohesion. Suburban homes are designed for nuclear families, privacy, personal space, separate bedrooms. That's beautiful when society functions. It's catastrophic in crisis. Your family will splinter into separate rooms during stress. Everyone retreats to their personal space. Communication breaks down. You're shouting between floors. You can't maintain visual contact. Children panic in separate bedrooms. Adults make unilateral decisions without coordination. You'll fracture into individuals instead of operating as a unit. And individuals die alone. The windows are psychological warfare. You can see out, they can see in. You're in a fishbowl. You'll spend days hiding from windows, taping up sheets and blankets, trying to block sightlines. But you'll need to see out to monitor threats. So you'll peek, you'll expose yourself.
You'll make yourself a visible target because staying blind is worse. The paranoia compounds. Every shadow outside is a threat. Every movement triggers adrenaline spikes. You're living in a transparent box where visibility is both survival necessity and fatal vulnerability. Your nervous system can't handle that paradox. You'll deteriorate. The comfort is a trap. You have a bed, a couch, climate control while it lasts, running water while it lasts. These comforts make you weak. They make you hesitant to leave. They make you believe you can wait it out. Just one more day, just until things settle down. Except things don't settle down. They escalate. And every day you stay comfortable is a day you're not adapting. You're not hardening. You're not becoming what you need to become to survive extended collapse. You're staying soft in a world that rewards hardness. The neighborhood is a liability. You know these people. Karen, 2 houses down. The couple with the aggressive dog. The teenager who plays music too loud. These were minor annoyances. Now they're competing survival units with equal claim to the same limited resources. You'll have to make decisions about helping neighbors versus protecting your family. You'll watch people you know suffer. You'll hear them die. And you'll do nothing because you can't afford to. The guilt will destroy you. Or you'll help them and deplete your supplies and die together. Either way, the social fabric of your community becomes psychological shrapnel. Children suffer uniquely. They don't understand. They want normalcy. They want school and friends and video games. They'll cry. They'll ask questions you can't answer. They'll regress. They'll act out. And you'll have to maintain parental authority while everything that defined your authority is gone. You can't promise safety. You can't promise it'll be okay. Because it won't be okay. You'll watch your children's innocence die in real time, and you're the one who has to manage their trauma while managing your own. This breaks people faster than any physical threat. Psychological impact score, 4 out of 10. You get points because familiar environment provides some initial mental stability. You get points because having shelter is better than exposure. But your home is an emotional minefield that sabotages rational decision-making. It's a comfortable cage that makes you weak exactly when you need to be strong.
Final verdict, the math of failure. Let's total the damage. Defensibility, 2 out of 10. Sustainability, 3 out of 10. Mobility, 2 out of 10. Psychological impact, 4 out of 10. Your final Z-score is 11 out of 40. That's 27.5% tactical viability. Classification, critical liability. Your $500,000 investment is a D- survival asset. It fails 3 out of 4 core categories. It actively works against you in multiple threat scenarios. You bought a participation trophy in the apocalypse and called it the American dream. Here's what you actually purchased. You bought visibility without defensibility. You bought comfort without sustainability. You bought community without security. You bought 30 years of mortgage payments for a structure that becomes worthless the moment the system supporting it collapses. Your home is optimized for a world that works. When that world stops working, your home becomes a strategic anchor, dragging you toward the bottom. The smartest thing you can do is acknowledge this reality right now. Stop emotionally investing in your house. Start treating it as a temporary fallback position at best. Begin hardening what you can. Reinforce entry points, stockpile supplies, plan your exit, and most importantly, accept that you'll probably have to abandon it. Because when things fall apart, you won't be defending your home. You'll be dying in it, while pretending drywall is armor and nostalgia is strategy. Closing, the next assessment. That's the brutal truth about your suburban fortress. It's not a fortress, it's a trap with a mortgage. If this assessment made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is the first stage of adaptation. Sit with it. Next time, we're evaluating something you probably think is worse but might actually surprise you. Hit subscribe if you want the next Z-score analysis. Leave a comment telling me what asset you want evaluated next. And if you're sitting in your suburban home right now feeling personally attacked, you should be. I just gave you the blueprint for why you're already dead. What you do with that information is on you. See you in the next assessment. Stay tactical, stay realistic, and for the love of survival strategy, stop trusting walls made of wishes.